Okay, so this is the anxiety workshop. I am going to be talking about recognizing whether or not you may be suffering from symptoms of anxiety, and to look a bit more at what anxiety is and what can cause it and what can actually keep it going. And then hopefully look at ways at overcoming your anxiety by learning better ways of coping with it. So what is anxiety? So anxiety is something we all experience from time to time. So it's a normal response to situations that we see as threatening to us. So for example, if we had to go to the hospital for a blood test or operation, or have to sit a driving test or take an exam, it's very natural to feel anxious. So anxiety at certain levels can even be helpful. So when we need to perform well, so say at an exam or to cope with an emergency, we think really fast and get the rush on. So next one, Greg. So yeah, but sometimes anxiety is not helpful at all because while symptoms of anxiety, they're not symptoms of anxiety, they're not dangerous, but they can feel uncomfortable. And symptoms can also be frightening, particularly if somebody doesn't know what these symptoms are, and that they're just signs of anxiety. Sometimes people with anxiety symptoms worry that they may have something seriously wrong with them. So then this worry can then produce more anxiety symptoms, which of course then increases the worry. And also when anxiety is severe, it can stop people doing what they want to do, which is an issue. If it goes on for a long time, it can also sometimes make physical problems worse, so such as stomach problems, high blood pressure, and things like that. Next slide, please. So common thoughts, reported thoughts with people who are suffering from anxiety. People say, I worry about everything, I get tense and wound up, I end up snapping at the children, or in work I end up snapping at colleagues. When people have to go and do something somewhere, they think, even before I get there, I start to worry about things, all the things that might go wrong, and then my heart starts to pound, and I don't know what to do. And then if I arrive, I might have to just leave the situation. Some people find it more kind of physical, so they feel like there's something in their throat, their mouth gets dry, they can't swallow, and then they begin to get panicky, and then their breathing changes, so they think that they're going to stop breathing. And another common one is or like somebody's mind starting to race. So thoughts just keep on racing, and people feel like they're going to lose control. And this mind racing often happens at night. So people wake up and then they can't get back to sleep because they're worrying so much. So these are some typical kind of experiences of people who suffer from anxiety. So if you are suffering from anxiety, you may have thoughts like this yourself. But sometimes it's possible to be suffering from anxiety and not even know about it. So yeah, let's look at how it can affect us. So anxiety can affect us in 4 different ways. So it affects the way that we feel, our bodies, the way that we think, the way our body works, and the way we behave. So yeah, next slide there. Sorry. Yeah. So with regard to how you feel, you can feel anxious, nervous, very worried and frightened. A common feeling is that something dreadful is going to happen. Your body can feel tense and stressed, uptight, on edge, unsettled. And some people experience it as like feeling very unreal, woozy, detached. And then when you're feeling these things, the way that you kind of think can change. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So you can be worrying constantly. You're not able to concentrate. Your thoughts race from one thing to one thing. Your mind jumps from one thing to the other. And people often imagine the worst and dwell on it. And also alongside that, going over the same worries again and again and again. Common thoughts that go along with this is like, I'm losing it, I'm losing control. People who their breathing changes, they feel like they're going to faint, like they're going to have a heart attack with chest issues. People feel that they may make a fool of themselves. If they're somewhere and they can't cope, they feel like they have to escape and get away. And alongside that, then what happens in your body, the next slide, please, is that your heart starts pounding and racing. Your chest can feel tight, your toes and fingers can go tingly, you can get butterflies in your tummy, you feel like you need to go to the toilet, your body aches, your muscles tense up, your breathing changes, you can get lightheaded. And often then what people do is, I'll just get the next slide, please. They pace up and down, they start a job and then they jump to the next job, they can't finish it, they can't sit and relax, they're on the go all the time. They talk quickly or more than usual to get everything out. And then this can lead to kind of snappy and irrational behavior with others. Some people handle it by drinking more alcohol or smoking more or eating more. And often people avoid those feared situations. So if you are regularly experiencing some or all of these symptoms, then it could be likely that you're suffering from anxiety. So what causes it? So anxiety is the feeling we get when our body responds to a frightening or threatening experience. So it's been called the flight or fight response. So it's your body preparing for action. So when it sees something threatening, it prepares to either fight the danger or to run away from it. So the purpose of the physical symptoms of anxiety are to prepare your body to cope with threats in your life. And to understand what's happening in your body, imagine that you're about to be attacked. So you're walking down the road in the night time and you see somebody coming towards you with like a baseball bat. So as soon as you're aware of the threat that's coming towards you, your muscles tense for action. So whether to fight or to fly, to run away. So your heart starts beating faster to carry the blood to your muscles that need to either fight or run away, and to your brain. So this is where the blood is needed the most. You breathe faster to provide oxygen, which is needed for energy. You sweat to stop your body overheating. Your mouth becomes dry. Your tummy may have butterflies because all the blood is running from your stomach to your extremities. And then when, for example, you realize that it's just somebody coming towards you that's a friend and they're joking, the feelings may die away, but you're left feeling shaky and weak after the experience. So yeah, the fight or flight response, I'm just going to go to the next slide, please, is a basic system that's going back years and years and years, back to the days of the cavemen. And it's also present in animals who depend on it for their survival. So yeah, so the caveman, if a big tiger is running towards him, he will get all these physical symptoms to either fight or flight. But nowadays we don't often have as many life or death situations. But yeah, if we do have something like that, we can't usually fight, we can't really run away from them. So when we get the symptoms, they don't really help. In fact, they often make us feel worse, especially if we don't understand them. So if we understand them and just go, okay, I feel threatened at the moment, but there's no threat there, then the symptoms will reduce. Right, so on to causes of anxiety. So there's loads of different causes, many. Some people may have a kind of an anxious personality naturally, and they've kind of learned to worry. So this can be a cause of more anxiety. So that's their resting kind of level. Some people have early experiences that make them feel anxious or insecure about certain situations. So if I don't know, if you were bullied when you were young, you're very, very aware of people on the street that may look a little bit like the person who used to bully you. Others may have a series of stressful life events to cope with. So for example, many bereavements or losing their job, divorce, illness. And often there's lots of pressure at work. So this can be another example of, what causes anxiety. So somebody going into a job where they're working long hours, they feel understaffed, they feel unsupported. That can be a huge trigger for anxiety. Or at home, for example, because of financial, family or relationship problems. So also what needs to be said is like a physical health problem or misuse of substances or a history of depression are also known to affect anxiety. But yeah, I'm just going to go to the next slide, please, Greg. Yeah, so I'm just going to explain a little bit about worry. So, yeah, just kind of bringing it back to the moment about coronavirus. Everything's changing rapidly at the moment, so there's lots of worry about. So it's like there's news 24/7, and it's hard not to worry about what it all means for you and for those that you love. But just to talk a little bit about worry, so there's a purpose for worrying. Um, so humans, all of us, have the ability to think about future events. So thinking ahead about things means that we can kind of anticipate problems or obstacles, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of plan solutions to those problems. So when it helps us to achieve these things, achieve our goals, thinking ahead can be really helpful. So for example, at the moment, hand washing and social distancing are helpful things that we can decide to do in order to prevent the spread of the virus. But conversely, worrying is a way of thinking ahead that often leaves us feeling anxious or apprehensive. So thinking ahead, planning ahead is helpful, but worrying about things that are ahead and worrying excessively about worst case scenarios and feeling that we can't cope, that's when it becomes an issue. So yeah, like what does worry feel like? When we worry, we feel it kind of feels like a chain of thoughts and images which can progress into unlikely directions. And people experience it as being uncontrollable. So if you can imagine something like a worry chain, so there's like the first thought is, I have a headache, and then, oh my God, what if it's coronavirus? And then the next thought could be, I went into work yesterday and I wasn't wearing my mask. Maybe I passed it on to everybody in work, and then everybody now will pass it on to their families and everybody will die. And then I'll be responsible because everybody will have died and I haven't worn my mask. So things like that, they just kind of worries accumulate. And yeah, it's kind of normal to find ourselves thinking about worst case scenarios at the moment. But yeah, if it's just something that's ongoing 24/7, it's when you need to kind of think about maybe you should seek help for it. Okay. So yeah, just one more point, sorry, about the coronavirus and worry. Like worry can be triggered by anything, but at the moment it's like a perfect storm. So the main kind of triggers for worry can be when when situations are kind of ambiguous, so they're open to different interpretations, when they're novel and new, so we don't have any experience to fall back on from before, and when they're unpredictable, so it's unclear how things will turn out. So everything at the moment falls into those three categories. Yeah, and as I said, like coronavirus and the pandemic is a perfect storm for worry. Yeah, it kind of makes sense that people are experiencing a lot of worry at the moment because of the uncertainty. So we're all in it together. You're all not alone. Right, so we'll just go on to the, oh yeah, so what keeps anxiety going? Right. So sometimes anxiety can go on and on and on and become a lifetime problem, and there's a number of reasons for this. So if someone has an anxious personality or is a worrier, then they will probably be in the habit of feeling anxious. So that's just their resting point. Sometimes people also have ongoing stresses over a number of years, which means they develop a habit of being anxious. And sometimes a vicious circle of anxiety can develop. So as bodily symptoms of anxiety can be frightening, and people often react by thinking there's something physically wrong, and something awful is going to happen. So if I just go to the next slide, please, Greg. So to use this as an example, so you're in an anxious situation, you feel that you're, I don't know, maybe you need to talk to somebody at a party. You feel that you're getting, like, caught in your throat, your chest is a bit, your heart's pumping, and then you think, oh God, well, something awful is going to happen. So when you have this thought, then more symptoms come along, so you feel more anxious, and then your thought is, well, now something is really going to happen, and then you feel more bodily symptoms. So it's just a vicious circle. So you have to kind of tap into that. Usually where I would tap into it is at probably the thoughts the thought bit, or try and catch it at the bodily symptoms bit, but I'll talk about that in a minute when we're looking at managing it. And also another thing that keeps anxiety going is that someone who's experienced anxiety in a certain situation may start to predict that they'll feel anxious, and then they become frightened of the symptoms themselves. So say, for example, you're going to get a blood test in the hospital and they were crap at finding your vein the time before. So you're going in there and you're going to go, okay, I'm going to be all tensed up and they're not going to be able to find my vein. And then you think, okay, my heart is going to start racing and I won't be able to cope. And by thinking this, you'll actually maybe bring the symptoms on. So it's kind of like a fear of fear. And we can just go to the next slide. And also another thing for keeping anxiety going is avoiding the situation or escaping from them. So avoidance is often used as a way of coping. So it's natural to avoid something that is dangerous to us. But a lot of the time people avoid situations that make life really difficult for them. So lots of people I've worked with before, they're afraid of kind of going out into open areas, afraid of busy shops or busy buses. Some people don't like to eat in public or to talk to others in social situations. So they're not dangerous, these things. They're quite necessary. So avoiding them makes life really difficult. And also, similarly, people often start out okay, but when the anxious symptoms come on, they feel they have to escape and leave quicker than they would have chosen to. So if, say, for example, you've built yourself up to go to a big social gathering and you feel a little bit shaky and panicky about it and you run off home, then you kind of escaping the situation can make you lose your confidence. You don't know that you can do it. You go home and go, okay, it's happened again, instead of riding it out for a little bit more and then going home and going, okay, cool, I stayed. So yeah, it's good to try and face things head on and not to avoid or escape them, but it's easier said than done sometimes. And it's it's a part of therapy to kind of work through these things behaviorally. Okay, so that's the first bit of the presentation. I'm just going to summarize on this slide. If you can just go to the so anxiety is the body's response to stress, and some people can be a bit more prone to it than others. When we suffer from anxiety, though it can be unpleasant, it's our body's normal response to threat and danger, and it's not dangerous. And anxiety symptoms are there, so it's a very old-fashioned system in our body, but it's the fight or flight response is intended to help us, to spur us into action. And as I said before, anxiety becomes problematic when the symptoms are severe and unpleasant, going on too long, happening too often, causing us to worry, not being able to sleep, stopping us when we're doing what we want to do. So I suppose at that stage you should try and maybe have a chat with your GP and explain that this is becoming problematic for you. And anxiety often becomes part of this vicious circle where our symptoms, so the way that we feel in our body and our thoughts and what we do, keep the anxiety going. Now moving on to how can I manage my anxiety better. So we can't cure anxiety, but we can break into this vicious circle, and we can learn ways to reduce it. So I would try and tackle things usually from like 4 different areas. So get somebody to understand the anxiety better, and then begin to tackle some of the causes. If they're having lots of physical symptoms, to try and work with those also. The majority of work I would do usually is trying to challenge or alter thoughts related to the anxiety, and also look at changing behaviors related to the anxiety. So I'll just go into these a little bit more now. So trying to understand your anxiety a little bit better would be is really good to be able to report it to somebody if you do need to get help with it. But it's good, it's useful to kind of see if your anxiety is related to certain situations, places, or people. So is it also, is it worse at a particular time of the day? So a lot of people say that they wake up fine and then it progresses during the day, and then by the time they're in bed, their mind is racing with worry and anxiety. And then also, like, are there realistic worries you have that would make anyone anxious? So kind of give yourself a break. Like, if you were in this situation, of course you're going to be worried and anxious about it. You know, it will pass. It's a situational kind of thing. But doing the following. So basically, I often ask people to fill in an anxiety diary. So everybody hates doing homework between sessions, but this is really helpful because if you fill in, so just write it down on a piece of paper, on your phone, and for a period of 1 or 2 weeks, to keep kind of like a diary, even an hourly diary of your anxiety, and rate it from 0 to 10. So, and note down anything that seems important. So, you know, anxiety 2, I was at home having breakfast. Anxiety 8, when I had to go to the supermarket. So yeah, like, note down whether you were at home or at work, who you were with, what were you doing, what were you thinking about. And then when you start to become more aware of situations that make you anxious, it's really, really helpful. And yeah, the information will help you to begin to tackle your anxiety. Also, problem solving. So if you become aware that you have a realistic worry or problem that you feel is causing the anxiety, you can use a problem solving approach. So a lot of the time people sit on problems for quite a while. So say, for example, something like debt, and they will just think, okay, I never have any money, and worry about that. But like, that as a problem is very, very vague. So you have to kind of break it down to, instead of I never have any money, to say, okay, I owe £1,000 to 2 different credit card companies or bank loans. And then underneath that problem, list all the possible solutions that you can, no matter how silly they are. And try and think how you've solved some similar problems in the past. A good way of sometimes problem solving is asking a friend what they might do, or to think to yourself what you might advise a friend to do if they had the same problem. So, and then work through that. Spend some time looking at the pros and cons of each solution. Yeah, and also think of, like, who might help, what might go wrong, and what's the worst that could happen. So yeah, if it's a problem that you can't overcome, please do ask for help. So if it's in relation to benefits or housing, you can contact or Positive East for help with that. If it's an issue with anxiety or low mood or trauma, you know, message me and we can set up an assessment session. So it's good to reach out and ask for help. So I'm probably trying to say, okay, general tips on at the moment. So general tips for a stressful lifestyle which you're having at the moment is try to identify situations you find stressful by noticing the beginnings of tension. So if you, every time that you go into, I don't know, a bar situation, you get this feeling in your neck, that could be you kind of, your body responding to think, oh God, I don't really like this place, you know? So just try and identify situations that you find stressful, and then maybe take yourself out of them or challenge them if you really want to do it. Make time at the moment for things that you enjoy. If you feel stressed at work, talk to your manager. Take up something relaxing or go for a walk in the evenings if you can. Yeah, so it's just general things like getting enough sleep, balance your diet, take regular exercise, learn to relax, and do a few aims for your day. A good exercise that I sent to everybody at the start of the lockdown was this, where is it now? Oh yeah, maintaining balance in your life. So well-being comes from living a life of balance. So a balance of pleasure, achievement, and closeness. So make sure you try and tick each one of those every day. So Pleasure could be, okay, today I'm going to make my favorite pasta dish, and eating it could be pleasurable. That could also fall into achievement. So I achieve something by making it. And closeness, try and keep up your social contacts at the moment. So give someone a ring, pick up the phone, join groups online. Yeah, so it's good putting your head on the pillow at the end of the day, saying that you've ticked off the pleasurable bit of your day, you've achieved something, and you've had closeness and social contact with somebody. So yeah, just general tips. Okay, so back to that, and can I just get the next slide, Greg? Okay, so yeah, reducing physical symptoms. So Andre, my colleague, is going to be doing a workshop on managing stress. So he'll be looking at a lot of stuff about physical symptoms, but I'll just touch on them today. But it's really good if you attend his workshop. He does counselling in Positive East, but also runs the mindfulness groups, which are amazing. So to reduce physical symptoms, relaxation is the first one, which is amazing. So it's useful when you feel the tension coming on to try and nip it in the bud. So once you've noticed the early signs of tension, you can prevent anxiety becoming too severe by using relaxation techniques. So some people will relax by exercising. Some people will play their favorite song, will watch TV to distract themselves, or read a book. Yeah, so I'll get Andrew to talk a little bit more about relaxation in his workshop. But yeah, like looking up something on YouTube, yoga, you can look up yoga. And also something that's really helpful is deep muscle relaxation. So you can also look up these videos on YouTube. So basically it's just finding a nice, secluded, warm, comfortable place that you won't be disturbed, which is hard at the moment, and to concentrate on your breathing, and then go through all the muscles in your body and tense them and relax them. But I can send on a link to everybody who's come along today to the workshop, a good one that they can talk them through the deep muscle relaxation. It's really, really good. And like a lot of people can't get into things like that. They say, okay, I'm not good with mindfulness, or I'm not good with meditation or relaxation. But if you just try and see if it works for you, there will be something that works for you. It's just worth trying them all and see. Controlled breathing is another one. So it's common when people become anxious, they start gulping for air, and thinking that they might suffocate. And this gulping for air makes people dizzy, and then therefore them kind of makes them more anxious. So try to recognize if you're doing this in a situation. So just, like slow your breathing down, and try and get into a slow rhythm of in 2 3 at 2 3, and soon your breathing will return to normal. Some people look at the second hand of their watch and try and breathe along to that. And then for people who are over breathing, you can breathe into your hands or into a bag. You have to cover your nose and yeah, that can be helpful for over breathing, as it's called. And distraction is good sometimes. When you're very, very anxious, if you try and look around you and study, I don't know, find 3 things beginning with B, just look around your environment, so bowl, whatever. It's a good way of distracting yourself. So that's all got to do with reducing physical symptoms, but I'll get Andre to talk a little bit more about that in the follow-up session. So now we're on to managing thoughts. Helping you alter your thoughts related to anxiety. So thoughts can keep the vicious circle of anxiety going. So for example, imagine you're running for a bus, and as you're running, you suddenly get a pain in your chest and you feel breathless because you've run for the bus. But the thought that goes through your mind is like, okay, I'm having a heart attack. But it could be just because you're a little bit unfit and you ran for the bus. Anyway, so the thought is, I'm going to have a heart attack. And then, of course, this thought is frightening. And so your heart starts to beat faster, which makes you think, God, there must be something really wrong with my heart. And then you may kind of like picture the ambulance coming and carting you off on a stretcher. So yeah, the trick is to try and catch the thought. So the thought there would be, I'm having a heart attack. And if you can kind of try and catch the thought and challenge it. So you could say to yourself, okay, I'm having a heart attack. Right, that's one thought. And then the more balanced thought would be, okay, well, I've actually just run for the bus and I haven't run in ages. So that's probably what's making me breathe quicker and my heart a little bit sore. But it's not always easy to find the thought that's making your anxiety work, or worse, I mean. Yeah, because the thoughts can kind of come and go in a flash. So yeah, if you can try and write down any thoughts, it's very, very hard. But like, so say for example, a thought might be somebody doing a presentation and you're thinking, you start panicking. It's like, okay, what is it that I'm thinking that other people are thinking? Like, are they judging me? So maybe that would be my kind of threatening thought, and that would make me more anxious. Yeah, so maybe try and imagine the last time you felt anxious and try and think it through in as much detail as possible, and try and hone in on the thought. And once you know what you're thinking, you can kind of fight back and challenge it. So yeah, so you can, I've got a list here which I can actually help, I can send on to you, but there's lots of unhelpful thinking patterns. So a lot of people might do something, this is tiny on my screen, so I have to squint. Oh yeah, so say for example, all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking. So I didn't do that perfectly, so I failed. Or either I did it right and perfect, or I don't do it at all. A lot of people think they can mind read, so they can look at somebody in a social situation and know what the other person is thinking, which is, you know, daft, because we don't know what other people are thinking of us. Lots of people kind of like disqualify all the positive things that they've done before and focus on one little negative mistake. So they could have done everything perfect in a report, but they forgot one comma, and they'll focus on that. So that's just kind of like some unhelpful thinking styles that people can have, but I can talk them through again. Some people exaggerate a lot, so they're prone to it in their head. Everything is bound to go wrong, it always does. Some people can jump to conclusions. So I've got a pain in my chest, therefore it must be a heart attack. Or a lot of people just focus just on the bad things. So I've had a really bad day yesterday, but then you ignore the fact that the other few days were really good. So it's sometimes good to try and hone in on helpful kind of thinking like that. So where are we? I think I'm going to the next slide, Greg. Oh yeah, I've done that, sorry. And if I can, oh yeah. So an anxious thought versus balanced thought, if you just write it down in a box. So an anxious thought of somebody could be, the dizzy feeling means I'm going to faint. And a more balanced thought could be, I've had this dizzy feeling loads of times before and I haven't fainted. Yeah. Another anxious thought people have when they start worrying a lot is like, I'm going mad. And a more balanced thought could be, I've not gone mad yet, through all the times that I felt this way. And the doctor tells me anxiety is not madness. It's just a normal thing in reaction to the world that we live in at the moment. I wrote down earlier another thought. Oh yeah, a lot of people are like worrying about like the lockdown and about being alone and in their houses. And you know, an anxious thought could be, I'll be alone, I won't be able to see anybody until 2021. And maybe a more balanced thought would be, okay, well, I'll be alone sometimes in the next few months, but other times I can join online events and discussions and see people and go, you know, look at faces in the supermarket, so I won't feel so alone. So you're not going to be alone forever, you know. Just when anxiety kicks in, it just brings you to the bad place straight away. So you have to kind of like balance it. It's like your two sides of your brain fighting with each other. Right, so yeah, so the aim is to get faster at catching the thought that comes along before you become anxious. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about worry. So if you are worrying a lot at the moment, things, upsetting thoughts are going around in your head and around and around and around, and it doesn't lead to any solutions, and it making you feel really anxious, then some of the following things can help. So I've asked a lot of people to set aside some worry time in their day, which sounds well, I don't know how it sounds, but it's really, really helpful. So if you go into the notes on your phone, keep a pencil, and write, like, if a worry comes into your head, just write it down and say, okay, cool, I can deal with that at worry time. I know it's not, suitable for everybody, because people can't actually stop worrying, but for some people it's helpful. So if you say from 8 until 20 past 8 tonight, this is my quiet time for problem solving. So you look at those worries. So throughout the day, when your mind is worrying, tell yourself that you will come back to it at worry time. And at the moment, like, we start worrying throughout the day quite often because there's news updates coming into our phone all the time, and that triggers another worry. So yeah, if something from the day is really, really worrying you and it can't get out of your mind, write it down and come back to it at worry time. So you can focus your energy back into what you're doing at that particular time. So yeah, also the worry tree is a good way of beginning to manage your worries. So the worry tree is kind of related to another, one second now, I just get the, the worry tree is good at kind of, Greg, can you go on to the next slide there? So it's good at picking apart what worries are helpful or unhelpful. So real problem worries, say for example, are actual problems that need solutions right now. So at the moment, given the real concern about the virus, there are helpful solutions which include regular hand washing, social distancing, physical isolation if you have symptoms. But hypothetical worries, so a different type, so there's the real problem worries and hypothetical. Hypothetical worries about the current health crisis might include thinking about worst case scenarios. So imagining that everybody's going to die, or most people in London will die. So real problem worries are about actual problems that are affecting you right now. So for example, I don't have enough toilet paper to do me until Saturday, or I don't have enough food in the house for the next few days. Hypothetical worries are about things that do not currently exist, but which you think might happen in the future. So what if I lose my job and I won't be able to pay my rent, and then I'm going to have to give up my flat? Or there's a report on television that there's no ventilators left in my local hospital and I could end up in hospital, and that kind of, it might happen. So what the worry tree is good at doing is that if you start at the bottom and notice the worry, and then say to yourself, what am I worrying about? Can I do something about it? So yeah, if yes, come up with an action plan of what to do, and then do it. So what do I need to do? When do I need to do it? How do I need to do it? If it's something that you can't do anything about, so can I do something about it? No, you let the worry go and change your focus back to your day, because there's nothing you can do at the moment about this worry. Then, can I do something about it? Yes. So you're going up to now, and if it's something that you can do now, just do it, and then let the worry go and change your focus attention back to your day, or schedule it for later on. Write it down on your worry list, and then change your focus back to your day. Right. So another thing that's helpful is becoming more comfortable with uncertainty at the moment. So yeah, so worry can be triggered by feelings of uncertainty, so not knowing what's going to happen next. When we're not 100% sure about things in the future, then we're likely to worry about them. So yeah, it's really helpful if people who are suffering from anxiety try to become more comfortable and accepting of uncertainty. So say, for example, a worrier will worry that everything will go okay and they want everything to be perfect. It's really, really good if somebody like that, who has that mindset, tries to not plan everything. It's easier said than done, but say, for example, go and meet a friend for the day and, like, you know, forget about that plan that you had in your head, just lead with what they want to do. So yeah, to try and be a bit more spontaneous, to let go of control. So if it's you that always books the table or books this and that for outings, let other people plan things for you. So it's kind of giving up a little bit of control and dealing with the uncertainty, and nice things can happen. It's really hard to do that at first, but it will help you to reduce your worry. And also another helpful thing for managing anxious thoughts is, like, oh, can I just go on to the next slide, please, Greg? So thoughts sometimes can come from, oh yeah, and I'll just go on to the next one as well. Cool. Core kind of beliefs that we have about things can then lead on to the way we think about the world and the way that we see the world and the way that we think about things. So some people kind of think to themselves, worrying about everybody shows that I'm caring. So if I'm worrying about my dad all the time, then by proxy I must be, you know, very, very caring. But like, there's more helpful ways of showing that you care. You know, besides worrying. Other people kind of think that worrying makes me prepared and helps me to problem solve. So if I worry loads and loads and loads about the fact that I don't know, about a certain situation, then it will be really, really helpful to me because I'll have thought it over and thought it over. But I think at that stage, it's kind of good to go back to the worry tree and think, is there something that I can do about it? And if not, just let it go and go back to your day. And then, like, because the fight or flight thing makes you prepared for threatening things in your life, some people kind of think that worrying can motivate them. But actually it totally demotivates people, and yeah, it totally reduces people's focus. And at the moment, like, a lot of people think that, like, worrying prepares them for bad things happening. And it could be things that might never happen. So does worrying about something that may never happen help? I'm not sure if it does. Yeah, so really try and limit the amount of time that you worry. As I said, it's easier said than done, but like, if you try and write things down, control the amount of worry in your day by setting a small amount of time, worry time every day, say 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah, you can kind of focus on the here and now, because you've got your worry list that you're going to actually worry about for 20 minutes if you are, you know, that way inclined and a worrier that needs to kind of think things through. So yeah, you can get on with things a little bit more and become a little bit less troublesome. Right. And finally, I know I've been talking nearly an hour now, but the last thing that we need to talk about is kind of like change in behaviors. So I'll just get you to go, Greg, on the next slide. So yeah, for challenging behaviors related, or changing behaviors related to anxiety, try and recognize when you're avoiding things, and whether it's possible to tackle the fears. So it will get better in time. So if you are afraid of walking into a room full of people, try and go for a few minutes and then leave and build it up, you know. Set yourself very small goals. So write down little goals that you'd like to tackle. So if you were to go in, say, I'm going to walk through and walk back out and pretend I was looking for somebody, or I'll walk in and I'll say hello to one person and then I'll go again. So, you know, you build it up in time. But like, if you sometimes put yourself into a situation that you find really anxiety provoking, instead of escaping, like, it's really good to gradually to try and increase how long you stay in the situation that makes you anxious. So anxiety is basically like a hill. So say there's like a little snail going up the hill. So he's gone up above anxiety hill. He reaches the peak, and he actually has to come down again, because it's not going to keep on going up and up and up and people just explode. It does reach a peak, and it does start to go down naturally. So if you stay in an anxious situation for long enough, your anxiety will reduce. Just think of the anxiety hill. Yeah, and people not only avoid situations and try to escape, they often do things to make themselves feel safer. So I don't know, like somebody in a supermarket might like totally hang on to the shopping trolley, and that would be their little safety net, like, you know, that they're covered and nobody can talk to them or go near them. But like safety behaviors, they help at the time, but they're not good in the long run. So yeah, it's good to kind of avoid them and drop them. And try and do things to test out whether your anxious thoughts are realistic. So if you think to yourself, if I talk in front of people, I'm going to go blank, try it out and see. So stay in the situation long enough to see if you really do go blank, and test it out, and you'll find that you won't, hopefully. So it's really important to recognize that the more you avoid something, the more difficult it will seem to overcome, which in turn makes you anxious. So it's good to prevent yourself from avoiding and from carrying out safety behaviors in all situations. So keep at it, keep practicing, and and then I think there's a slide after that, Greg. So treatments available for anxiety. So lots of people can nip it in the bud by using self-help, such as this workshop. Or if you feel that it's like something that's really, really impeding on your life, you can talk to your GP about it, and they can refer you on to talk-in therapy, or to somebody within the mental health team. So there's mental health team workers who can help you with anxiety. Sometimes doctors prescribe tablets for anxiety, but that's when it's quite severe and affecting quite a lot in your life. But your GP will be able to decide whether that's something that's helpful. There's also anxiety management groups online, and computerized CBT. So CBT is like cognitive behavioral therapy. So the C would be dealing with the cognitive stuff, B, behavior, and CBT, cognitive behavior. So the cognitions, which are thoughts, and behavior, and the therapy. So trying to deal with both. Sorry, there's something coming up on my phone. Dealing with thoughts and behavior, and the link between them, and trying to help with the thoughts to deal with the behavior, or helping with the behavior to deal with the thoughts. Okay, so that's where you can help, look to find help with anxiety. And also just to say that I've kind of focused on generalized anxiety today, but there's also other different sorts of anxiety. It's just on the next slide there, Greg. So there's like social anxiety, which is fear of being around other people or in crowds. There's also within the umbrella of anxiety, there's obsessive compulsive disorder, so OCD, so having to do things over and over again. At the moment, people with OCD say that the whole hand washing thing is really good for them because it plays into their kind of germ phobia. Panic disorder is something that is when anxiety attacks come out of the blue. So that's another form of anxiety. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, so high levels of anxiety following a distressing event. It can be health anxiety, so at the moment a lot of people are writing about this because people are thinking that they have coronavirus symptoms, and then they're going to get tested every week in different places, and taking up lots of the kind of slots for people who may actually have it, but they can't actually accept that they are not positive. So yeah, that's something that needs to be tackled. depression can go alongside anxiety, and stress. When stress is too much, it can lead to lots of worry and then therefore lead to anxiety. So they're all different types of anxiety we can you can look into another time. But yeah, for now, I just kind of concentrated on generalized anxiety in the time of COVID.